When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Magic Kingdom. User: Big 8. Posted July 9th, 1995.
My grandfather Abe was a tough-as-nails coal miner. When he retired, he and my grandmother moved into a little house in Steubenville. Abe's neighbors told him a man had been killed in the house they bought. I guess there's no obligation on the part of the realtor to tell you this, or if there was, their realtor conveniently forgot. The neighbors said one of the previous owners was a drunk who would regularly get a load on at one of the bars downtown, then drive himself home. This guy had lost his license and just kept doing it. Then one winter night, he hit a local kid who was biking home from a friend's house. The neighbor said he probably never felt a thing. He hit him going so fast. Supposedly, the guy was out on bail when the kid's father came to his house and shot him in the head. No chit-chat, no warning, just bang. Abe checked it out, and it had really happened. The kid's memorial was in a cemetery across the river, and his father was still in prison. Abe wasn't the kind of guy to dwell on things like this, so he never told us kids about any of this. It wasn't until after he died that my grandmother shared the story with us. It shed a lot of light on things that had happened when we stayed there. During summers and Christmases growing up, my folks would cross the river and leave us at Abe and Grandma's house. We always loved being there and never really questioned it when rooms would go ice cold for no apparent reason. Sometimes things would get moved or fall over and break without anyone having done it, but since our grandparents never questioned it, at least in front of us, neither did we. The only sign of something being out of sorts was the odd time I'd catch Abe mumbling under his breath and shaking his fists at the ceiling. One time, when I was maybe 5, I distinctly remember him saying, "When I die, I'm gonna come back here and punch that guy in the face." This is gonna sound made up, but when my grandmother eventually revealed the whole story to us, she said that maybe a few days after Abe had died, she heard a ruckus in one of the bedrooms. She thought maybe a squirrel had gotten in and was tearing things up, but when she went in there, everything was in order. Later that night, she woke up sometime after midnight to find my grandfather standing at the foot of her bed, smiling. She said that was the end of all the funny business in the house, so I guess he kept his promise. Like I said, Abe was a tough guy. Now, that might have been the end of the strange stuff in their house, but not the end of my experience with ghosts. When I was maybe 11 or 12, my dad and I took Grandma to Florida for a vacation. We still were seeing her on holidays and during the summer, but she got lonely the rest of the time. The drive from Steubenville to Orlando takes forever, something like 18 hours, so we were going to do it over the course of 2 days. We picked Grandma up around 5 in the morning, and while trying to be helpful, I managed to lock her keys inside the house. We spent an hour crawling all over that damn house, trying to get inside without breaking any windows, until finally my dad told me just to forget it. He said we had all our bags, so we may as well just get on the road and worry about it when we got back. Well, he could worry about it when he got back. I spent the entire trip worrying because He told me that when we got back, I was gonna get a whooping. Disney World is a lot less fun when you spend half the time thinking about the beating waiting for you when you get home. The concern must have shown on my face because I remember sitting on the bench, having a bit of a sulk and staring at the ground when one of the Mickeys came over to me. He put his hand on my chin and gently turned it up toward the sky. I don't think mascots are supposed to talk, but this one did. From inside the costume, I heard a man's voice say, "It's gonna be okay, kid." Then Mickey patted my cheek and walked off. It sounds kind of stupid now, but it helped me feel better. I didn't think about the whooping for at least 4 hours. I don't think this guy was a psychic or anything. I think he just recognized a kid in a bad state and wanted to help, but it turned out Mickey really did know what he was talking about. When we finally got back to my grandma's house in Steubenville, it was at the end of a long day of driving, and my dad was not in a good mood. The dread, which had been heavy in my stomach, really started to bubble when we pulled up in front of my grandma's house. We made one last attempt to get back inside, but it wasn't happening. Everything was locked tight. We were getting ready to break a window on the back porch when we heard my grandmother calling to us. We went around front to see what was going on, and the front door was wide open. Dad asked where she'd found her keys, but she said she hadn't. The door had just opened for her when she tried the latch. When we went inside, her keys were sitting there on the hook next to her china cabinet, same place they always were. Dad's mood brightened right up, and mine did too. Grandma gave us both a kiss goodbye, and we got back into the van to make the final leg of our trip. As Ohio and then West Virginia rolled by, I thought back to what the Mickey had said and realized he'd made a promise Abe's spirit kept. Things were okay. I knew that no matter what, he was still there, looking out for me.
Subject, here first. User, 10 Proud Pop. Posted May 13th, 1996.
If you've ever bought a house, you know what a hassle it can be. Once you get through the negotiations, which are always dragged out by the owner not understanding how markets work and thinking their house is worth about twice what it actually is, you still have to deal with the bank, and after that, there's about 2 mountains worth of paperwork to get through. And then once you've got the house, you got repairs to think about, even in a place like ours that's only about 15 years old. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather own than rent, but still, what a drag. My wife and I have been in this place for almost 5 years now, and it's been a crash course in both home maintenance and metaphysics. Home improvement because the furnace loves to break and the plumbing needs constant attention, and metaphysics because we've got a damn ghost. At first I didn't clue in because who would? We started hearing scratches coming from the walls and ceiling, so I figured we had rats or something. No big deal. When birds suddenly started flying into our windows, sometimes as many as 10 a day, I thought it was weird, but who knows why birds do the things they do? Their brains are the size of a walnut. They can't be that smart. It took running into the previous owners during a Kroger run for me to think something was up. We'd briefly met each other during the sales process, so I recognized them right away when I bumped into them while looking for chicken noodle soup mix. After the obligatory Midwestern "how you doing," the wife blurted out, "Have you had anything unusual happen?" before her husband cut her off and changed the subject. He's either the world's most boring man or a master of misdirection because I don't remember what we talked about, just that afterward he hustled her out of there as quickly as he could without it looking suspicious. I kept thinking about what she'd started saying. Have you had anything unusual happen? Especially after our cats started refusing to go in the upstairs bathroom. They'd get as close as the doorway and stare intently like they were seeing something I couldn't, but they absolutely would not go further. Maybe 2 months in, I was walking down the hallway and the linen closet door opened up right in front of me. Nearly gave me a damn heart attack, too. I tried to push the door closed, but it wouldn't budge, even after I leaned into it. I went around to the other side, figuring something had fallen out and was wedged against the hinges, but there wasn't a single thing out of line. Once I'd done that, I was able to push the door closed with 2 fingers and an ounce of pressure. The unusual things were piling up, and we were far from done. The next thing happened to my wife Amanda and I as we lay in bed watching TV. The bed shook, like in that stupid mattress commercial where they dropped the bowling ball on it. We looked at each other, then tried to find what, if anything, had fallen on the bed, but just like the closet, there was nothing. I remember Amanda saying to me, "Todd, what the hell is going on in this house?" So I finally told her about the conversation, or attempted conversation, I'd had with the previous owners. I hadn't consciously kept it from her. It had just somehow not come up between us till now. Another time, I was in the walk-in closet getting dressed while our cat, Brutus, sniffed around and pawed at the carpet. I was sitting down, facing the door, putting my socks on, when suddenly the closet door swung open like Amanda was coming in. At this point, you can probably figure out what comes next. There was no one standing behind the door. It had apparently just opened itself. Or at least whatever had opened it wasn't visible to me. Brutus got a different view, I think, because a second after it burst open, he hightailed it out of there like the neighbor's dog was after him. That was finally enough to make the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Amanda had her own experience in the walk-in. It was similar to mine, except instead of the door blowing open to show no one was standing there, I walked in and she jumped a mile because she thought I was already standing behind her. Days after that, I was brushing my teeth in the morning and saw a large shadow pass behind me into the bathroom. The morning after that, I was again brushing my teeth when something tapped on my right shoulder. Remember that this is the bathroom our cats refuse to enter. Not great. Even the water has been getting in on the action. Despite us having installed a new well pump and pressure tank, all of which should keep the pressure constant, every single tap in the house has, at some point or another, just turned itself on. The toilets also like to flush themselves. Compared to seeing shadows or having doors fly open, this is pretty soft soap, so I don't mind it as much as you might think. By this point, though, you might be asking, why are you so sure you're dealing with a ghost instead of drafts and bad plumbing? The answer is simple, and it comes from my backyard. While digging in the flower bed last summer, way further down than I had in years past, I found a large stone. I dragged it free of the dirt and leaned it up against the fence so I could hose it off, and you want to guess what was under there? I'll tell you. Hand-carved letters. That baby was a grave marker, and I believe its owner is the one we're sharing our house with. It might seem like a big leap, but I'm a logical person, and you try combining everything that's gone on with the presence of a tombstone and see if the math comes out any other way. In a lot of ways, it's made all this easier to deal with. It's hard to be mad at a guy when he was here first.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.